The twins are the least played killer in Dead by Daylight, but by far the most underrated. I set out to learn this killer and demonstrate the sheer power that they hold. For context, I've played Dead by Daylight a lot, but am far from a pro, probably like most of you watching. And in my experience, many videos and guides come from people who have sunk thousands of hours into the game.
Fucking god, they're Ghostbusters! Da-na-na-na-na!
And while I don't mean to shade them, their gaming experience simply differs from that of the common player base, making it difficult for the more casual players to learn from their advice.
Spine Chill is a great perk.
Next, we're going to go over a few perks that I think you should avoid as a beginner. The first perk is Spine Chill.
Now, I used to play pretty half and half between Survivor and Killer. My main was Plague, and I thought I was decent. But after so many MMR changes, I found playing Killer to be a pretty miserable experience, which caused me to shift into exclusively playing Survivor. When I occasionally did play Killer, I only stuck with my best characters, because if I struggled to play them, how was I supposed to learn a brand new one? But one day after rank reset, I decided, why not, and started to learn the twins. I hadn't played a single game with them before, so I looked online for a build and found one that looked good from Linksy, the world record holder for fastest twin 4K. The build consisted of Barbecue and Chili, Scourge Hook Pain Resonance, Dead Man Switch, and Force Penance. This build definitely encourages a certain type of playstyle, which I'll get into later. After this, I looked up some guides for the best add-ons and gameplay strategies. For every game except for the first few, I used Tiny Fingernail, which reduces Victor's unbinding time by 0.5 seconds, and the Toy Sword, which decreases Pounce charge time by 0.2 seconds. These both are common add-ons, so you can pretty much play every single match with them, and only need to revisit the Blood Wed from time to time. The most common way to approach twins is to keep as many survivors injured for as long as possible. That way you can easily down them with either Victor or Charlotte. With all that, I jumped into my first few games.
Isn't it past your bedtime?
Isn't it time you die?
Things are not going well, but I did notice a TTV in my 5th game. They happened to be a Twins main, and told their viewers that they could tell I was new because I wasn't slugging. I don't have the clip, and I'm pissed because this was my Master Uruguay enlightenment moment, but the next game I decided to go with the strategy. This is where I really figured out how the Twins work. You literally can be in 2 places at once, and you need to leverage that as much as possible. While it may be deemed as toxic, tunneling, camping, and slugging to an extent is how to successfully play as the Twins. With this strategy, I just kept going and I played more and more games, and there were a few things that I noticed that were very little but really did make or break the game. First, patience is everything. This applies to several elements relating to the Twins. First, when pouncing as Victor, missing could potentially be detrimental, so it's better to take it slow and be accurate than to rush. This isn't the Huntress where you can just throw another hatchet. If you're chasing Survivor across the map and Victor gets kicked, you'll probably lose them by the time you catch up as Charlotte. You also need to decide the most comfortable distance for pouncing. The further away you are, the more difficult landing is, but Victor is harder to hear. So if a Survivor is doing a gen or unhooking someone, this is the best time to do a more risky long jump since they aren't moving. He's also much more likely to run into an object if the Survivor is hugging a rock or something similar. With all that, however, I gravitate more towards getting close to the Survivors and waiting for an opportunity to jump. Most Survivors eventually will mess up and will give you the perfect window. Next, slugging will probably be a strategy that's foreign to you. It especially was for me. You get so used to picking up Survivors as soon as you down them, but as the Twins, you may not either have that possibility depending on where Charlotte's positioned, or you may get the chance to go after another Survivor, which creates so much more pressure. If 2 or more teammates are on the ground, you can almost guarantee that the other Survivors will come to save them, and you need to be sure to use this to your advantage as much as possible and lure them in. Whenever I down a Survivor as Victor, I would see if I could at least pounce on someone before going back to Charlotte. You don't need to necessarily commit to a brand new chase. In fact, going too far away from the down Survivor usually isn't worth it. But injuring Survivors and ignoring them will significantly contribute to slowing them down. Also, be sure to know your own playstyle and how comfortable you are with keeping Survivors on the ground. You don't need to down all 4 of them at the same time to be successful. If down Survivors are far apart, it makes more sense to hook one of them than to spread yourself thin guarding them. Especially if you have a perk like barbecue and chili, consider the information trade-off when hooking someone and taking that extra time. Finally, just know it's okay if a down Survivor gets up. You inevitably will run into Survivors with Unbreakable, For the People, or another perk that's similar. I had games where the entire team was down, and while hooking them, someone picks themselves up and saves the entire team. And while this is super annoying, you just have to remember that there's an entire injured team, and you were able to down them once, so just do it again. Also, just want to be clear that slugging is not the only effective way to play the Twins. It's just a tactic that they especially can utilize because of how their mechanics work. Next, understanding how the Twins work is essential, and while this sounds stupid, I encountered Survivors that didn't seem new to the game, but clearly did not know all the Twins' powers. With the Twins being such an underplayed killer, many Survivors have no experience against them, allowing you to shock them with their more obscure abilities. First, when Victor jumps onto a Survivor, they're inflicted with the Broken, Oblivious, and Incapacitated status effect. This means that they can't heal, do gens, or go into lockers, but do keep in mind, however, that they can unhook Survivors still.
I don't give a fuck. Oh my god, I can't heal with this on?
Additionally, if Victor's on a Survivor, that Survivor cannot leave through the exit gates, so be sure to jump on a healthy Survivor, especially if they're camping the exit, because if you can get to them as Charlotte and down them in time, the exit will continue to be blocked for a short period of time, allowing you to get a last minute hook. Another thing is, you can body block as Charlotte. If you're chasing Survivors, especially in indoor maps, switch to Victor and block their path with Charlotte's body. They normally would be confused and either give you time to jump on them as Victor or switch back to Charlotte. Keep in mind though that Charlotte and Victor can body block each other, so if you're in the middle of the chase, be sure to switch in a spot that doesn't create a roadblock for yourself. And that leads me into my next point. Don't be afraid to switch between Twins even in the middle of a chase. Setting up Victor in a loop and switching to Charlotte allows you to utilize Killer's Instinct and pretty much have scratched mirror. Survivors don't expect rapid switches, and keeping them on their toes will ensure success. On the flip side, if you're chasing someone as Charlotte and you encounter a loop with a pallet, I normally switch to Victor because he can jump over pallets onto Survivors, another fact that not a lot of people know.
respectively. In what universe did that hit?
The game doesn't let you leave Charlotte or Victor sitting right in front of a hook survivor to prevent face camping, but if Victor's standing next to a hook and you put the survivor on that hook after, then he'll stay there and you can still use Killer's Instinct. And since no one plays the twins, no one's noticed and this hasn't been patched. Charlotte can still control an area even if you're using Victor. Less experienced survivors especially will be scared to work on a gen knowing that the unconscious Charlotte 5 feet away from them can chase them at any time. So whether you actually switch to her or not, considering her positioning can slow down progress. And finally, if Victor checks the locker with the survivor inside, he'll hold it shut for 10 seconds, allowing you to at least catch up in a chase with Charlotte or grab them if you're close enough. To fully understand the ins and outs of the twins, I played a total of 50 games as them. And now I can tell you that I went from missing every Victor jump to getting consistent 4Ks against toxic Survive with Friends lobbies. After all my games, I averaged 2.72 kills, and the survivors finished with 3.28 gens on average. If you exclude my first 5 games where I was focusing on learning the mechanics, those both go to around 3. The gen spread was pretty even, but 40% of games ended with all the gens being completed. I did find myself doing quite well in the endgame in many matches, normally because as long as I downed one survivor, no one else would leave until they were safe, which gave me the opportunity to do some damage. Now, looking at individual games, 50% of my games ended in a 4K. I wanted to remind you that I don't play Killer that often, and before a week ago, I had never touched the twins before, so if I can do this, you can too. At first, it is difficult. There are more buttons than most killers, and it's super disorienting at first when you switch between the killers because they're different heights, they're looking different directions, and they're in different places. Controlling Victor also gets a lot of getting used to, but once you get the hang of it, you will be successful. You're going against survivors who are inexperienced against this killer, and you know all this knowledge. Victor doesn't get the benefit of perks, however, Force Penance does work with him, and I would highly recommend this perk for pretty much any twin build. Hitting a survivor taking a protection hit, such as while healing or hooking another survivor, they will become broken for 80 seconds. With your main goal being to keep survivors injured, this guarantees it more than almost any other perk. My build mainly focused on information gen control, and while every killer can make diverse builds work, the twins are so unique in that they can make many builds work because there are so many different playstyles as them. While the gen control is useful in slowing down the game and gave me more time to down survivors, the twins are momentum based, and there were games where I really couldn't get my footing until the late game. Especially when I mainly focused on slugging survivors, with 3 of these perks depending on hooking them, I had games where most of my perks did very little to help. In those cases, perks like Noad or Blood Warden would have been much more helpful. If instead of gen control you want to create pressure by keeping survivors injured, Sloppy Butcher is the perk for you. I had an embarrassing amount of survivors bleed out on the ground, which was okay with me, but if you want to get more consistent hooks, Deerstalker is definitely a great perk because they can crawl away very fast. And if you want to physically control where the survivors are going, maybe don't slug and go for a basement build with Iron Grasp, Mad Crit, and Territorial Imperative. Then if all else fails, you can always go with a meme build. There's an add-on called Iridescent Pendant, where if the survivor crushes Victor while you're controlling Charlotte, they suffer from the exposed status effect for 45 seconds. So you could just not use Victor, plant him in front of a Hex like Devour Hope, then just treat him like a landmine. I really hope that this helps you. Again, there were great tutorials out there, but they come from experts who don't quite know the relatability of trying to learn a new killer. So I hope this brand new perspective could help you. I would also love to do another one of these videos, so please comment down below the killer that you'd like to see next. I would really appreciate if you liked and subscribed. I'm trying to get a community tab, and your support would mean the world. But for now, goodbye.